Hey guys, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning here tonight to chat about this new Osees album, Protean Threat. Osees, legendary, prolific San Francisco-based psychedelic rock, garage rock group headed by the legendary John Dwyer. Whatever incantation of their name you're familiar with, honestly, they're one of the most important bands and most influential bands that I've ever listened to. In their early days, I was super into their very ghoulish, very freaky side of psychedelic rock and freak folk. On albums like The Master's Bedroom, Help, Dog Poison, Putrefiers 2, all really hit very close to my heart, especially my all-time cult favorite, Osees album, Castlemania. Between the light on the ears music, but these twisted vocals and even more twisted lyrics, I, in my teen years, thought this was the coolest freaking act around. But then I sort of lost interest with them for a while. I thought Warm Slime was very, very safe. Carrion Crawler the Dream had a lot of great tracks on it, some real live staples, but also had a lot of fluff on it as well. A lot of people I saw getting into the Osees because of albums like Floating Coffin, but I personally thought that it really wasn't that remarkable all around, and I really was ready to write them off completely with the Drop album. However, it is safe to say that as of right now, in 2020, they're kind of in the middle of this really great creative streak. Mutilator Defeated at Last, I thought, was some of their best songs in ages, maybe even ever. I really loved the twisted, gory, throttling sci-fi infused album Weird Exits. Orc, while not as catchy, was just as throttling, insane in times, and just absolutely crushing as well. To me, honestly, Smote Reversers seem to be in a culmination of everything they've been doing the last few years. Now, last year's Face Stabber, I didn't get a chance to talk about because I thought it was, I don't know, pretty average overall. I thought it was good, but it was also a double album. Now, the Osees this time around have given us one album, and honestly, I've been pretty pumped to talk about it. Let's do it. This album starts off with Scramble Suit 2, and this is honestly starting off the album with a bang. Right off the bat, it's super noisy, just very agitated sounding. But clearly, the Osees are still on this sort of oddball experimental streak with these very ghoulish vocals and these weirdo horns that pop in for the chorus, but I absolutely love it. It is just so bizarre to hear a track like this, even with a band that's done much weirder. Personally, though, it excites me, and it reminds me that the Osees are really seriously still in the middle of this experimental boom that they're in right now. Dreary Nonsense kind of sounds like a much more slim, trim version of what they were going for on Face Stabber. As a matter of fact, this album overall I feel like is a much more slim and trim version of Face Stabber. It's a lot catchier though, it's a lot more true to form. It sounds much more like an Osees track. But I love how meaty it is, how throttling it is, even little details like how these guitars sound like freaking sirens at point. This is great. Upbeat Ritual is legitimately one of my favorite deep cuts here. It's times like this that the Osees just sound at their most streamlined. While they're on cruise control, they're still putting out some genuinely great psych rock and garage punk. The slick grooves, the wailing guitars, the ghoulish vocals, the tense drumming, it's all here in spades. Not only that, but John Dwyer's vocals here, he sounds so dangerous, and that's why I love hearing him the most. On the other hand, Red Study reminds me of just what the Osees can do with a serious groove, which is quite a lot. It's something that they've actually done a lot of over the last few years. This is no different, but it actually sounds great. Not only that, but the vocals here kind of add this sort of campiness that this album was lacking. It's something I'll always love from Osees. Just a great, low-key, sort of very tense jam. It seriously just really works with their style very well. Terminal Jape also has really excited me for a while, ever since they released that rehearsal footage on YouTube a couple of months back. It brings in the intensity of their last few recordings in a big way. It's much more pummeling, and John Dwyer here brings in that snarl in his voice, gets a little aggressive. I love it. It's easily the most intense track here, but at this point, I kind of needed that. Clearly, the Osees are still very much in this experimental streak, but there are a few tracks on here that worry me that they've bitten off a little bit more than they can chew. Said the Shovel honestly let me down. Look, I had a lot of hope for this track, especially when I heard that very slick groove here and some of the vocals. The funk aspects of this track are really fascinating just because it's something that the Osees haven't done with anything in a while. Groove aspects are fine here, but everything else about this track makes me worry that the Osees have bitten off a little bit more than they can chew. Everything else about this track just seems very average. For lack of a better term, Mismuth is just kind of ugly. It's not nearly as slick or has that sense of cool as earlier tracks here. It actually reminds me of why I fell off with the Osees for a while. Production is very average, and overall this track just seems underwritten. And Toadstool is my least favorite track here. In times like this, I kind of get the feeling that I don't even think Osees know what this track is supposed to be. Not even in an exciting way either. The off-kilter funk and the wonky guitars here are very average. It just doesn't seem nearly as exciting as earlier tracks here. And you know what? I get it. They all can't be rippers. They can't be as aggressive as earlier tracks here. But man, this just is so boring, and it's the longest track here and my least favorite. And Persuaders Up as a finale is kind of a letdown again. For a finale, they sure sound here like they're still desperately trying to figure their sound out. Now, Dwyer's yelps and some of the plucked guitars are exciting, but as a finale, this just leaves me with more questions than answers. But the rest of this album, while not mind-boggling or anything new in the Osees catalog, I think is very solid. Wing Run is another really great deep cut. I love the cosmic vibes on this track in a lot of ways. It reminds me of what they were doing on A Weird Exits. But I love that. I love the determined riff and the spacey synths here. And as this track keeps going, it just gets more and more out of control. And while this is nothing more than sort of a jam and instrumental interlude, honestly, I think it connects a lot of the ideas of this album in a pretty good way. And If I Had My Way is just the sort of track I'll always sort of pop from the Osees. It's super retro. It sounds like an early 70s psych rock jam that's just a little ahead of its time, and a little darker as well. But it's just so slick and catchy. It also has a lot of the same krautrock influences of the last few years that the Osees have been working with. As far as a more jammy track goes, I think Gong of Catastrophe is the way to go. It's on the darker side, but it also has this sense of mystery to it and this sense of drama. It's the sort of track that you're going to hear from the Osees that makes you guess what's going to happen next. I love that. And outside of that, I think this might be John Dwyer's best performance here. That, alongside of this low-key funk, and some of the lyrics here remind me of what I loved about the Osees in their early years. A lot of the same elements show up on Canopnr 74 as well. It's actually just a little bit more upbeat, which is really nice for this late album track. Little details like Dwyer's very hypnotic performance and the hand claps really make this pop as well. I mean, you could argue that this is a little bit too old school, but it's what the Osees have always done so good. So overall, I don't think this is nearly as genre pushing or as forward thinking as some of the last few releases in the Osees catalog, but honestly, I don't think they really need to be right now. They kind of sound like they're on cruise control, but even when they're on cruise control, they're still one of the best, most captivating psych rock, garage punk bands out there. Yes, a couple of tracks on here make me worry that they're maybe biting off a little bit more than they can chew. Maybe that they're a little lost and don't know what they're going to be doing the next couple of years. But overall, this is another very solid release in the ever-growing Osees catalog. I'm feeling a strong 7 on this album, but let me know what you guys think down below. If you liked the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, guys.